I'm Kim McReynolds. I'm with the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. I'm an area agent in natural resources and partner a lot with the Hereford and RC&D. Linda Cyril back here with the Coronado RC&D and with Art Dean, who will be talking in a while with the NRCS out of Douglas. And we've partnered before in these workshops. So we're happy to have you here. So what we're going to do is look at some of these weeds, why we're concerned about them, and the first thing I want to talk about is definition of weeds. And we all have our own definition of weeds. It's usually a plant that's out of place. If it's a dandelion in your lawn or something else growing in your driveway, you consider that a weed. So it's a plant out of place based on your judgment. A noxious weed is a non-native that is regulated in some way by law or regulation. So there is a federal noxious weed list, and there's a state noxious weed list. And so most of the plants that I'm going to be talking about this morning are listed by either the state or the federal government as being harmful to human health or the environment. And invasive species, by presidential executive order, this is a quote from a presidential executive order that causes economic or environmental harm to human health. So there are legal regulations regarding these weeds. I'm going to give a couple of examples of different weeds in different states to show what the potential that these weeds have to cause problems. The first one's spotted knapweed in Montana. We do not have spotted knapweed in southern Arizona. It does occur in Yavapai, Coconino counties along the Arizona Strip. But it showed up about 80 years ago and infests up to 6 million acres in Montana alone right now. They've done quite a bit of economic studies on spotted knapweed, and they're estimating $42 million a year economic loss just on this weed alone in the state. The thing that also concerns us about these weeds is once they become a monoculture, they don't hold the soil in place so well. And so in this study, they had a lot higher runoff on an infestation site, and they were losing 8 tons more soil. And once we lose our topsoil, we lose our ability to regain our natural vegetation back again. So that's a real concern. Another example is yellow star thistle in California. All of these weeds tend to be from other places, a lot of them, like yellow star thistle from the Mediterranean region, why it does really well in California, because that's their climate. But they'll come in, like this one in the 1800s, and they'll just kind of sit there for a long time. At some point, they become well adapted and really take off. And in California, they estimate around 20 million acres. It's the largest economic cost for the California Department of Transportation is trying to control this along their roadways in the state. They believe it came in as a contaminant in alfalfa seed in the 1800s. We'll go through some characteristics of yellow star thistle in a bit. But basically has spines that are about 3/4 of an inch long on the flower head and very stiff. And so this field in California that's completely infested with it, people don't even want to recreate in lands like that because you can't have to walk through those spines. It causes chewing disease in horses, and we'll talk about another weed that does that, which is basically kind of liquefies a part of the brain that enables the horse to swallow, so they can't drink and they can't eat. And it's irreversible, and you have to put the horse down. So there's a lot of problems once these weeds get established. So now we're going to go through some of the weeds that we've got either in the area or adjacent to us in other counties that could possibly come. We'll talk a little bit about their biology and control methods. And so the first one I'm going to start out with is Russian knapweed. This is a field, abandoned farm field over by Duncan, and everything you see there is Russian knapweed. It's made a total monoculture. So key identification for Russian knapweed, they have roots that go 25 feet deep. They're rhizomatous, so they go laterally through the soil. Bless you. Thank you. They're black in color, and later on when we get some light, if you look right where that plant would go into the soil at the root zone, it'll be black right there. And that's kind of a key characteristic. It also has these root nodes that will produce more plants. And this is about February of the year. You can see those root nodes starting to grow up and here. So this one rootstock can actually have many plants coming off of it.
I know you've seen that.
And that's just a graphic of how that might grow. They reproduce by seed, but then once they become established, they really depend on this root system. And talking about the root system, get me to just maybe flip the light on real quick, Jim. This is an example. This is actually leafy spurge, which we find around the Flagstaff area. We have not found any here. So this is about the same size as Russian knapweed would be. So here's your above ground plant, and that's the root system that it's got underneath there.
How old is this plant, maybe?
It could be a couple of years old. And so all those red marks along the root would be like those nodes that I was showing you where it can put up new plants each year. So once it becomes established, it's pretty tough to get rid of. Okay, it can be 1 to 3 feet tall, just depending on where it's located. If it's in kind of a dry area, it won't be as tall. But if it's along a river or something under cottonwoods where it's trying to reach up for sunlight, they can be quite tall. Sometimes I've seen them up to 4 feet tall in river bottoms. The leaf shape varies. These are early rosettes when it's first coming up, and around the end of March, 1st of April, depending on the weather that year. It can be entire leaves, or they can have these deep lobes. Maybe when you get thank you, Art. You can have these deep lobes on it too. And then once it starts to bolt, the leaves will be even different looking than that. The flowers are cone-shaped. They vary in color. Most of the time you'll find them this kind of purplish color, but I took this picture of white ones in the same field. So the white and pinkish colors are unusual to find here, but they can occur. On the knapweeds, the bracts are important to look at. That's these individual pieces that are holding the flower parts are called bracts. This is spotted knapweed, the example I gave in Montana. It's got the dark colors through it. This is diffuse knapweed, which occurs also in northern Arizona. It's got these fine hairs on the bracts. This is Russian knapweed, and it has a clear membrane that can either be pointed or rounded. And that's how you can tell the three knapweeds. We do have a lot of Russian knapweed in Cochise County. A lot of it. I talked about reproduction, some that it can reproduce by seeds and by the root nodes. It does go dormant. This is a field. It's pretty easily seen if you know what you're looking for, even when it's dormant, because it leaves these kind of skeletons from the year before where it flowered. And so all this gray is the year before's growth of Russian knapweed. It'll start, like I said, end of March, 1st of April, start poking through the soil surface. Depending where you're at, depends on the weather each year, how much rain we've got. It can come even as early as February sometimes. But the majority of it flowers in May, mid-May, and goes to seed, and then it will go dormant sometime after first frost, later in the year. Just to give you an example of the types of habitat you can find it in, this is a livestock corral. We think it probably came in contaminated alfalfa bales because it's really thick in the corral and then spreads out on the farm further out. This is it right in the irrigation ditch. This is abandoned farm field. This is along the roadway. This is in the Gila River where it's just sloughing off and going into the river. This is all it under these cottonwood trees. This was in a median in Wilcox, and it's hard to see, but there's a light gray band going through here, and this is in the field of alfalfa. Russian knapweed is a state-listed noxious weed. Just skip that. All right, so when we're talking about working with some of these noxious weeds, we talk about integrated weed management. There isn't one fix to all these weeds, so we look at prevention and early detection as one way. It's easier to pull one weed when you find it than hundreds of acres to try and control later on. So knowing what the weeds are, which is part of the quiz part this morning, and getting the word to someone right away and getting rid of the plants is pretty important. And I'll have a couple of examples of that later on. We have mechanical methods, we have cultural methods, biological and chemical. So prevention is reporting the infestation, controlling it immediately, and we always have to follow up with treatments because a lot of these have seeds in the soil that will last many years, and so we just need to keep going back until we get all that seed. Mechanical on Russian knapweed, you don't want to plow it. Why not?
Spread the seeds.
Spreading the seeds, but more important, think about that root and all those little root nodes. All you're doing is chopping it up and making more plants. So you want to mow it at the flower bud stage so it doesn't go to seed if you're going to mow. And you need to clean equipment. And I think some of our infestations in the county have been caused by not cleaning equipment and taking mowers from one road yard to the next road yard and having seed on it. So it's really important that equipment's cleaned at the site where you're treating it before it moves to another place.